Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Green. Welcome to the Center for Environmental Health's third Audacious Action Virtual Town Hall. Our final virtual town hall in the series is scheduled for next month on the 21st, and we'll have Shauna Swan, the author of Countdown, and Dr. Tyrone Hayes. We'll send you details soon. At CEH, we're committed to ending the use of toxic chemicals that are presenting a health to people and all living things. If you're inspired by our work, we invite you to donate. Throughout this town hall, you'll see a text to donate number, or you can go to ceh.org. And speaking of support, I'd like to thank some of our generous sponsors. There's Footprint, Lexington Law Group, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, LinkedIn, Ponterea, and the American Sustainable Business Council. There's more listed in the chat box. One other thing, if you like what you're hearing today and you want to get others involved in the fight to protect Prop 65, please tweet about this event using the hashtags CEH Town Hall and Prop 65 Protects. So Prop 65 is unique. There's nothing like it. This California public health law has protected millions of people across the country from chemicals that cause cancer and undermine our reproductive health. Probably what people are most familiar with about Prop 65 is the labels on consumer goods, but its real impact is harder to see. During this virtual town hall, we'll explore the often unseen benefits of Prop 65 and the efforts underway to help defend it. I'm excited to introduce our panel of speakers. They're from business, from labor, public health. They're all leaders in their field, and they have firsthand knowledge of the importance of Prop 65 and why it's important to defend it. So first, I'd like to introduce my friend Leticia Ayala. She's the Healthy Kids Campaign Director and Leadership Development Director at the Environmental Health Coalition. She works with community residents to reduce or eliminate environmental housing hazards and promote healthy, accessible, safe, and affordable housing for children in high-risk communities. I've had the honor of working with Leticia when CEH partnered with EHC on an integrated strategy to eliminate lead from candy nationally, and Prop 65 was a key component of that strategy. Leticia?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the CEH team for inviting us to this town hall. I really do hope that it will inspire many folks to join us in defending Prop 65. Environmental Health Coalition for the past 40 years has been using this incredible tool to protect our children and our families from these chemicals in our communities, in our environmental justice communities. So I'm very, very happy to be here. And as Michael said, my name is Leticia Ayala. I do go by Letty. And I've had the great honor of being the Healthy Kids Campaign Director at EHC for 26 years now. So let me share with you our story, our Letting Candy Prop 65 story. So one day a friend calls to say that she overheard me on CNN News say that children are eating poisons. And so once this information about letting candy was picked up by the CNN, the information went everywhere. Of course, we were called by media outlets in many parts of Latin America, including as well as the US. And we were invited to many morning shows, radio shows, you name it. In fact, the Orange County Register did follow our work throughout our work with the letting candy issue. And they ended up doing a huge expose on the Mexican candy manufacturers and how they were basically manufacturing candy with lead in it, with just horrific astronomical levels of lead. They went on to win a Pulitzer Prize for their great deep investigation. But what I want to say is that even with all the massive information, the media work, the Pulitzer Prize, nothing had changed. Children were still eating candy. So we decided to go the legislative route, and we did end up passing AB 121, which took 3 years, a long 3 years. By then it's 2006, and even the letting candy standard that was part of this legislation unfortunately hasn't been officially adopted yet. So fast forward 15 years, it's 2021, and our children are still waiting. They would still be waiting for justice. And I say this because during this time period, there was another candy, the jelly poppers, that was found with high levels, that was a choking hazard. And of course, let's take action. Immediate action was taken. It was recalled, pulled off the shelves, as it should have. But yet, on the issue of our leading candy, there wasn't any action because it was impacting primarily Latino children. So what really got the attention of the candy manufacturers and for us to do the great work of defending children's health was our Prop 65 lawsuit. That's when we were able to get them to the table. And as a community-based organization, I felt really empowered throughout this process where I was sitting alongside with just experts. I know they would see me as an expert, but they were, really great attorneys, Attorney General's office, and members from CAH staff who saw us as an expert and part of the team to come up with the strategy and to lead the negotiation conversations, which is pretty amazing. And for us as a community, it was very important for us to ensure that we did not shut down businesses. We wanted to protect, especially the mom and pops. All along, the media had been taking this issue as a US against Mexico. Okay, now they're attacking the candy. What now? And for us, it was important to demystify all of that and to really put it out as a public health issue, that what we're talking about is toxics, that we love our culture, we love our candies, we want our piñatas, but we just needed the reformulation. We were not interested in a label. We weren't interested in having them create two different batches of candy, one for the US as exportation, because that's all we care about is US. No, we are a binational organization and we wanted a clean line of candy for everywhere, not just US or Mexico, but all the way down to Argentina. And we did it. We finally got the settlement, and this created a pool of resources, of dollars for those mom and pops so that they could have access to an independent auditor to know about the best practices, to have a pool of non-lead-based inks, companies that would produce their wrappers, to have a pool of these chili powder companies that were selling the chili powder safely. We established a leading candy standard, huge, and identified labs for these candy manufacturers. And what I want to say is a little history on these candy manufacturers. They grew out of their homes. They were just really small companies who then really became bigger facilities, and they were never used to being audited. A lot of them are from the Guadalajara region, and they're all like cousins, and they're family owned businesses. So this was a new culture, and what we needed to do was to get them on the right path to do it correctly. And it was a very successful experience. 6 years after that settlement, I was able to attend with, again, the pool of resources, attend their annual Candy Expo to then get other candy manufacturers to buy in. And today I can tell you that 90% or more of these candy manufacturers are doing it correctly, when of course they were saying it was impossible. And if we catch somebody not doing it correctly, well, we have a program. We can say, well, get with the program. Here you go. Here's what you need to do. So candy products from Mexico and from many places are safe now because we set the standard. We said no, and we used this incredible tool to really get all of this done in the facilities where it needed to be done. It wasn't about just slapping a label and keeping the poisons in candy. We wanted to do it right for our children and not put the burden on parents or children to be reading labels. So thank you. That's our story.
It's so powerful. Next, we're going to get to all talk in a little while. We'll all have a conversation together. Next is Martin Wolf. Martin's the Director of Sustainability and Authenticity. I love that job title. At Seventh Generation Inc. Martin's responsible for creating frameworks for the design of sustainable products, as well as for more sustainable systems of commerce, and for working with other businesses, industry associations, and decision makers to implement those frameworks. Seventh Generation has a deep commitment to transparency. I've seen it myself. They're not just about their own products, but they're about being vocal business leaders, advocating for what's right, like Senate Bill 258, which they helped get passed, which now requires cleaning products to list all toxic chemicals on their labels. I'm a big fan of Martin and Seventh Generation because they walk the talk. Martin?
Thank you for that introduction, Michael. And thank you, Letitia, for that very inspiring story of action by a community to bring positive change. It's so good to know that that can happen and is appreciated. So Seventh Generation is a relatively small company, so I'll quickly introduce it. We're a manufacturer of household and personal care products, such as laundry detergents, dish detergents, paper products from recycled paper, baby diapers, and baby wipes. The name of our company is from the great law of the Haudenosaunee Nation, that in our every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. And our company has a mission, which is to transform the world into a healthy, sustainable, and equitable place for the next 7 generations. Among our product standards is a requirement that no ingredient be a carcinogen or reproductive toxicant. The Prop 65 list of substances known to the state of California to cause cancer or reproductive toxicity is one of the lists of chemicals of concern that we use to ensure compliance with our standard. Beyond our company standard, Prop 65 is fundamental to a consumer's right to know what is in the products they bring into their homes. For example, I may choose to purchase a product with a Prop 65 warning because it performs a certain function well. But because of the Prop 65 warning, I do so with knowledge of the risk and the need to take precautions to minimize my or others' exposures to the product. Absent Prop 65, I would be denied that knowledge. When Prop 65 is combined with an ingredient disclosure law, such as SB 258, the California Cleaning Products Right to Know Act, Prop 65 is an especially powerful tool for driving the formulation of safer products. For example, when SB 258 was being drafted, companies specifically asked for a 3-year exemption from reporting the presence of Prop 65 chemicals, so they would have time to reformulate products to remove the Prop 65 chemicals. And ultimately, that is the purpose of Prop 65 and a sign of its success. Not just the disclosure of the presence of these chemicals known to cause harm, but to encourage the reformulation of products containing such chemicals and thereby reducing the risk of harm to consumers and the environment. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Michael?
Thanks, Martin. Finally, we have Tony Stefani. He's a retired captain with the San Francisco Fire Department. After 27 years of service, Tony was diagnosed with transitional cell carcinoma, a disease associated with the exposure to chemical flame retardants. After successful treatment, Tony founded the San Francisco Firefighters Cancer Prevention Foundation, dedicated to the early detection and prevention of cancer in both active and retired firefighters. Since its inception, the foundation's been involved in 2 major studies that have been published linking firefighters to a greater risk of cancer. And I'll also just say that I've worked with Tony for years and he's a world changer. Tony?
Thank you very much, Michael. I'd like to start by saying that how fortunate we are to have the Center for Environmental Health and Proposition 65 working for us. It's extremely important for us to be notified and aware of these chemicals. I'm not sure how what other way we would receive this level of awareness if it wasn't for these two for the Proposition and for CEH. To give you an example, we were contacted by CEH many years ago, probably back in 2012, along with the Green Science Policy Institute in Berkeley, telling us about flame retardant chemicals. And up to that point, we had always thought that these particular chemicals were necessary and needed to give a family or workers the opportunity to escape smoke and flame and not be basically put in a situation where they were going to have extreme exposure to these toxins. But little did we know that these particular chemicals did not perform any valuable life safety or health advantages. In fact, they made our job extremely toxic. We found out that we had high levels of these particular chemicals in our blood through science-based studies. And we became advocates to see that these particular chemicals were removed. And through, again, the work of CEH and other organizations and going through the state legislature and giving testimony back in congressional committees in Washington, D.C., the changes occurred. And in 2000, and I believe it was 2013, Technical Bulletin 117-13 was passed. And now people have the right to order their goods, as far as furniture, the toxic, flame retardant, chemical free. And that's extremely important because it was extremely bad, especially for firefighters in these situations, to be exposed to these particular chemicals with what they were off-gassing. The other thing we're involved in right now are PFAS chemicals. This is another chemical that was brought to our attention. Again, Center for Environmental Health, Proposition 65. We did not know that these particular chemicals were found in actually the protective equipment that firefighters wear, better known as our turnout equipment. When we found out that these chemicals were involved, again, we went to science-based studies. We took blood samples, urine samples, looked at firefighters before and after they donned this equipment, and the same thing with working fires, and found that both men and women in our profession have elevated levels of these PFAS chemicals, much higher than the general population. Again, another cause of concern for our profession, and another move that we have to make to be sure that these chemicals are eliminated, not only for our profession, but for the general population. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with these particular chemicals in drinking water. They're known as forever chemicals, and it's extremely important that the level of awareness is brought up with these particular toxins. And again, Prop 65, Center for Environmental Health lead the way when these circumstances start. As Michael said, our foundation has been dedicated to the early detection and prevention of cancer since 2006. We're going into our 15th year. And because of it, we have made, along with other organizations here in the United States, profound changes in the culture of the firefighting profession, where men and women now are fully aware of the toxic exposures that we are confronted with. We've been involved in major studies, the largest one with the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health that looked at a cohort of 30,000 firefighters. This was 3 cities combined, Chicago, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, and looked at the causes of death dating back to 1950. It was interesting when the epidemiologists came to San Francisco. They told us back in 2010 they didn't think that they would see any elevated rates of cancer in our profession because we're considered to be a healthier workforce, because firefighters do have a tendency to keep themselves in shape and to continually go to get blood work and checkups on a yearly basis. But they were entirely surprised after a 4-year period with the investigative work that they did, that they found that we had higher levels of multiple forms of cancer than the general population. So again, the level of awareness is now brought up in our profession. The culture is changing, and we're going in a positive direction to better protect the men and women of our firefighting profession.
So you can see why I was excited about the speakers. So to first of all, just to think about firefighters who are making a conscious choice to do a really dangerous job, and then the fact that while they're doing their job, they are being exposed to chemicals because chemical companies have sold through a hustle that we need to have chemicals in the furniture that is then in the smoke that then exposes the firefighters, is just the exact kind of thing that this law was designed to try to take on and address. So now we have a whole bunch of questions. The first one is actually from the Facebook chat, and it asks about, it says that the Prop 65 was designed in part to have citizen enforcers. So how can parents such as myself pursue Prop 65 justice and lawsuits independently? And so if the law gives anyone the legal right to act, but it's complicated because you have to have a lawyer and you have to have specialized expertise about the law. And so if someone who's watching has thoughts about something that they think might be a violation of Prop 65, you could call us at CH and we could help you figure out whether that is in fact a violation. There's also a website that describes it really well, and it's the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OEHA, that's the California State agency, and they describe it really well as well, to describe which chemicals are on it. Leticia, so how have you seen Prop 65 protect us in our home, in our neighborhoods, and especially if you have any thoughts on how it's benefited low-income communities and communities of color who are suffering already a disproportionate burden of toxic exposures?
Thank you so much for the question. I was really prepared and I asked Joy Williams, who was our scientist. She recently retired, but I have access to her. And I wanted to ask her, because when there's an issue in our communities, we would go to her and she would dig up the information and go to the Prop 65 list. So I want to read to you what she said. The Prop 65 list was always one of the first things I would check when a concern was raised about a particular substance. We would always mention in comment letters and testimony if there was a Prop 65 listed chemical at issue. So it's been very useful over the years. So in our environmental justice neighborhoods, it's mixed use. So that allows polluters to be right next door to childcare centers, to be next to schools, to be next to homes. And I know this is not everybody's reality. In fact, this is mainly in the lower income neighborhoods, people of color. In fact, the number one indicator of where these toxic facilities go to is where you have, it's race, where you have people of color. And so that's usually communities that are disenfranchised, that may not even know where to go or ask the question, feel empowered enough to even, pick up the phone, may not speak the language, may not even be, fully documented in this country. And so there's just, there are people living in the shadows. And so here we have an organization like Environmental Health Coalition that has, somebody that knows where to go and can dig up this information and then be able to give it to the community so that then they can be their own spokespeople. They can take action, because we know that information without action isn't really going to change anything. But not having the data would be a problem. So we've been very fortunate to have this list that we can count on, and then we can go to the appropriate authorities to say, hey, we've got a problem. This is a toxic chemical, and these are the health impacts, and these are the community members, and these are their stories. So that's a situation that has happened over the 40-year history of Environmental Health Coalition. So it's a long time.
That makes me think, that, first of all, just so people know, that list of chemicals, so the chemicals on the Prop 65 list are known to the state of California. That means the state has done the science to either cause cancer or reproductive toxins. And there's about 850 chemicals on the list. So, Martin, I'm wondering, from the perspective of your leadership at Seventh Generation, how has the Prop 65 list that Letty was just talking about catalyzed businesses to be able to innovate or create better products for their customers?
Thank you for that question, Michael. So Prop 65 doesn't catalyze, to use your word, businesses to innovate. It requires that they disclose the presence of substances that are known to cause cancer or reproductive harm if present, just as you said. However, there is a catch. They need to be present in an amount above what's called the safe harbor level. The safe harbor level is chosen such that the risk of cancer or reproductive harm from daily exposure to a substance is less than one additional harm per 100,000 population. So in California, with about 25 million people, that's about 250 extra harms, cancers, or reproductive events in that population. But many consumers have a lower tolerance for risk than the 1 in 100,000 standard. They prefer to have as close to zero exposure to carcinogens and reproductive toxicants as possible. And companies that formulate to meet the needs of these consumers innovate by developing products that do not use Prop 65 substances as ingredients at any level. These products not only have to be formulated without the Prop 65 ingredients, but they must also perform as well as comparably priced conventional products, which is challenging. But there are rewards for meeting this challenge. Most importantly, there is the satisfaction of creating a product that does not contain ingredients known to cause harm. Then there is the fact that companies that offer such products are growing on average about 5 times faster than conventional companies. Ultimately, conventional companies will want some of that growth, so they too will formulate products without Prop 65 substances as ingredients. So you can see that Prop 65 provides the motivation for companies like Seventh Generation to innovate, to meet the demands of our consumers, and are doing so and growing rapidly attracts conventional companies to try to make products similar to ours that also avoid the use of Prop 65 chemicals.
So, it's creating incentives for companies. There's another question. This is also from Facebook. And Tony, this one is for you. Firefighting turnout gear now comes with a Prop 65 warning. How backwards is that? And do you have thoughts on what chemicals from the Prop 65 list are in firefighting gear, and any thoughts on that and what to do about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike, and it's really a time-sensitive question because we have just started a study at Stanford looking at this problem, and it has to do with PFAS chemicals. Basically, we know that PFAS chemicals are surfactants, and the way that they've been embedded in firefighter personal protective equipment is used to basically repel water. It's also been used for an extremely long time in what's called AFFF foam. It's aqueous film forming foam. This particular type of foam is used in Class B fires, which are flammable liquids. And what that surfactant does is it provides a barrier over the burning material that basically prohibits oxygen from feeding, and it extinguishes the fire. But little did we know that these particular chemicals are causing a huge problem, like I had mentioned in my opening remarks, as far as reproductive problems, cancer and other situations that it's definitely not good for our health. So what we've done, this study is going to be at the Sean Parker Center for Allergy and Asthma Research at Stanford University. And basically, we're looking at a set of turnouts from a manufacturer that says this particular product that he is going to hopefully get our contract for is PFAS free. And so what we're going to do is evaluate if these are a durable product to use in extreme conditions. And the most important thing is to see what type of biological or harmful chemicals or metals that are being used in these products as a replacement, basically, for PFAS chemicals. So the study is designed basically to sample the actual material used in both the current San Francisco Fire Department standard issued turnout equipment and the PFAS-free turnouts. And then what we're going to do is biologically monitor the cohort of the San Francisco firefighters and look at their blood samples prior to and after working fires to see if this new product that they've come out with is actually doing what it says it's going to do, looking at the samples of the products to be sure that they do not have any other hazardous chemicals or a different form of PFAS chemicals in them. And basically, it's going to give us enough information to hopefully to expand the study and focus particularly at this aspect of PFAS-free turnout equipment that is going to benefit the whole firefighting profession. And what's extremely interesting is in this new study that we're involved with is the EPA has decided that they are interested in what we're doing. And on the 21st of this month, they're going to go to Stanford and they're going to set up and discuss the study with the principal investigator, Dr. Pruninki. And they are now interested in conducting a similar study or possibly piggybacking on the study that we currently have in place. So we're moving forward definitely in the right direction. And again, if it wasn't for Prop 65, if it wasn't for organizations like the Center for Environmental Health, this level of information and level of awareness would not be apparent. We go by standards, and these standards are set by the National Firefighters Protection Association, the NFPA. And, the PFAS chemicals are involved. And one thing that firefighters now realize that there are members of that board of the NFPA that actually work in the chemical industry. So it's something that we have to be aware of and to be leery of when recommendations are made. And I think we're all at the point now, knowing the problems we do have within the chemical industry and the amount of chemicals that are basically unregulated, that we have to definitely raise our level of awareness and push forward in the right direction to be sure through science-based studies that this stuff is seen and directions are changed to be positive for the health and safety of not only firefighters, but the general population.
That's great. The same person also asked, are there other chemicals besides PFAS that you're aware of in firefighting turnout gear? We will find out when this gear is totally analyzed at Stanford. That, when you're involving organizations like Berkeley, like Stanford, like UCSF, with science-based studies that they do and the scientists that are involved, we'll find out. And it's going to definitely be interesting to see if there are other chemicals in there that could pose a problem. Got you. And thank you for mentioning Berkeley and not just Stanford. I wore my blue shirt on purpose. So another question was about other ways that people can learn about Prop 65 and how they might be able to take action on their own with it. So on that same website that I mentioned, there's a really excellent one-pager with links called Prop 65 in plain English. And so you can look there and it'll kind of walk you through what are the requirements. it's not necessarily designed only for someone who might want to be a citizen enforcer of Prop 65. It's also designed for companies who want to avoid being out of compliance with Prop 65. But that's also, for that question, that's one potential other place to look. Let's see. One question that somebody asked was, what can people in other states learn from the California experience with Prop 65? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? You're on mute, Martin.
Thank you. I clicked the wrong spot. I'll jump in and say that because California is such a large economy, and because companies don't like to make lots of different versions of a product, and because of the difficulty, if they did make lots of different versions, of making sure the right version went to the right state, Prop 65 warnings show up in every state. So California is making sure that we are all aware when a product contains a Prop 65 chemical. And as I said before, this is something that a consumer has a right to know, that a consumer should be aware of, so that he or she uses the product appropriately or chooses a different product if they don't want to take the risk of exposing their family to a substance known to cause harm. So it helps California specifically, but it helps the rest of the country also.
You know, Letty, that makes me think of when you were talking earlier, what Martin just said about how the priority, which we all had with your guys' leadership when we were fighting the lead in the candy, was not just to protect California kids, and especially not to have a warning, which is not puts the burden, just like you said, on them. So you said something really interesting, because you said not only the U.S. and Mexico, but you said Latin America in general. Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of the sort of impact that it had across the hemisphere, this California law in that case?
Yes. So, because we did have the independent auditors come in to assist the candy manufacturers, we were able to have information about, what they were doing, and or what they weren't doing. And one of the things that we did learn in the process of them going through their initial tantrums and, this isn't going to work and we can't do this, the unfortunate decisions of wanting to do a clean line for the US. And then everybody else will get whatever is on their shelves right now that they had to pull out, and will continue to sell it in the remaining part of the world. And one thing that did happen was LA is kind of like a hub for the distributors. And so they would, of course, not buy them from the US. They would drive down to the border to Tijuana to purchase the candies themselves, and probably they have their favorite companies that they would go to, their stores, and then they would bring that line over to the US and sell them here in LA. And then from LA, of course, it would be shipped throughout the state of California. And so we were able to catch them at this game. And that was an early on strategy on their part, which we were able to say, no, this is not what we really want is a clean line for everybody. And so then wherever they get shipped to, no matter Argentina, we know from every part of Latin America that these candies are being sold. They're very popular. They're very tasty. They're mouth-watering as I'm speaking now. And so they're much more economical for our communities. There's something that it's like 25 cents versus 60 cents for the chocolate brand here in the US. So, and they don't have the little chili, and They don't have, the tamarind. So these are ingredients that are very popular in our Latin American countries. So yes, Michael, this victory is not just national. We went international with this one. So yeah, be very proud.
We've also seen that at CEH. We have seen that same thing often when we are able to get an entire sector to eliminate some toxic material from their products. All the companies in that sector, because of globalization, those products very often are not made in the U.S. And so we know, even though we don't have any metrics, we know that it's also protecting the workers who are manufacturing that anywhere in the world. And it's also protecting the communities near those facilities if they stopped using whatever, lead or whatever it is in those settings. And it chokes off demand for those chemicals in general. So I think that's one of the most exciting parts about it, that we're able to let the tail wag the dog, where this California warning law actually is protecting people from toxic chemicals all around the world.
And if I may add, the chili powder, that's an important ingredient in so many other products, not just candy, right? It's used in chips and in so many other, it's like a byproduct of other products. So if we're able to get our clean, safe chili powder, then it's not just the candy lines, but all these other branches of food. So yes, like you said, that part is like the ripple effects of this one case that are harder to have metrics, like you said, but it's changing the entire culture. So it's phenomenal.
Got you. There's lots of questions coming in. So I have this experience for many years when I speak with Tony that everybody wants to hear from that cool firefighter guy. So here's another one. Tony, someone asked, I don't know if this is from Facebook or where, those of us working on PFAS in products would love to learn more about the study at Stanford. And I'm wearing a blue shirt. How can they connect with that? When will it come out? How will people be able to learn about the results, either along the way or at the end?
Good question. The study has just started, for one thing. Stanford will definitely publish the study once it goes through peer review. The timeline, I'm not aware of. Sometimes these studies seem to grow as they progress. And depending, like I had mentioned, if the EPA becomes involved in this thing, it can get even more detailed and look at things even deeper than the PFAS chemicals. I would say one of the best ways to stay updated on this particular study is to go to our website, because the updates will appear on that website. It's the initials of our foundation, SFFCPF, followed by .org. In fact, there is a brief explanation of the study on our webpage right now. And that would be probably the quickest way to get information on the way the study is evolving and the type of information that the researchers will let us publish as the study goes along.
Great, thank you. So here's a question that I think is probably from me. What chemicals has CH gotten out of products or communities with Prop 65? So I'll just give an example of one in the past and an example of one we're trying to do now around products. So this started maybe 15 years ago, but we systematically tested every children's product that could conceivably have lead for lead. So the Mexican candy work is an example of that, but there was also baby powder and baby bibs and toys and all kinds of other children's jewelry. And then each time we found a sector that had a lead problem, we used Prop 65 enforcement to get the companies to reformulate the products without lead. And then at the end of that, so then there's no lead in the baby powder, and there's no lead in the baby bibs, and there's no lead in the toys. And then at the end of that, we were able to, with our friends, get federal legislation passed banning lead and a couple phthalates in children's products nationally. And the only reason we could have gotten that passed was that we didn't have that much opposition, because they had already all taken those chemicals out of the children's products. So that's just sort of a to me, kind of an exciting manifestation of the power of this law, and the fact that it doesn't require enforcement by an agency, that, you know, all of us can do it on our own. And then one that we're working on right now is there's the chemical that was in the movie Aaron Brockovich, hexavalent chromium. That chemical is used to tan leather. And so we found it in leather gloves and shoes and other things like that. So imagine if you're wearing a glove, and we've all done this, you pull the glove off with your teeth. But even without that, it is absorbed very well through your skin. And so our intention is to get them to implement all these practices that will protect the workers in the global south who are tanning that leather, and also protect consumers everywhere in the world from that hexchrome. We'll see how it plays out. It's happening now. Let's see. The next question is not really about Prop 65. It's about the four of us. And so the question was, what motivates you in your work? So that's a very diverse thing. So there's in essence, a labor organizer, and a community organizer and advocate, and a corporate executive, and a nonprofit guy. So what motivates you in your work that's related to what we're talking about today?
Do you want me to go, Mike?
Sure.
Yep. I think what's really important and what motivates me is seeing positive change in our profession and in the culture of our profession. And again, I mentioned the level of awareness and the ability for firefighters to better protect themselves and the population. One thing I forgot to touch base on was the current problems that we're having in our state, and that is the major urban interface wildland conflagrations that we're almost seeing on a yearly basis right now. And again, Prop 65 that brought the level of awareness to various toxic chemicals that we're faced with on our profession, as well as studies that we've been involved with. You see these men and women on these fire lines now that are exposed to these chemicals when these fires move into these urban areas for 12 to 24 hours at a stretch. And the downside is, if you pay close attention when you're looking at the news in the evening and watching these firefighters, what are they protected by? Basically nothing. A handkerchief over their face. The case is, with this particular types of fires, the firefighters cannot don a 30 or 40 pound air pack on their back. They have to be extremely mobile. They have to be able to move in and out because of the changing conditions of these wildland fires that are basically, you cannot predict what they're going to do, especially when they create their own winds and basically their own type of atmospheric conditions. So now there's a push with Cal OSHA to better protect the men and women with some type of breathing equipment that is lightweight and will lessen the exposures on the firefighting lines with these major conflagrations that are going on in our state.
Martin, Letty?
Thank you, Michael. I really like this question because it gets to seventh generation's mission, which is to transform the world into a healthy, sustainable, and equitable place for the next 7 generations. First, in commerce, as in all society, there must be justice and equity in the way we conduct ourselves, or we will not have stable commerce or a stable society. One has only to look at the news to see how inequity in commerce leads to inequity in wealth, inequity in health, inequity in policing, inequity in our treatment of each other. Use of substances of concern is one driver of environmental injustice and inequity. If we're going to sustain our society, this injustice, this inequity must stop. Second, the environment sustains us all, so the environment must be sustained. If we're to continue as a species on this planet, we must change the way we conduct commerce. All the wealth we derive from commerce starts with the environment. And if we harm the environment, ultimately, we are harming ourselves. So often I'm asked the question, what is the business case for sustainability? But the question is an absurdity. And to go back to the question you asked about the tail wagging the dog, Michael, it's like asking what's the tail's case for wagging the dog. The question is backwards. The question is not what is the business case for sustainability. The question is and must be what is the sustainability case for your business. If a business is not sustainable, if a business is not contributing to the well-being of our environment, and if a business is not contributing to the advancement of our society, what is the justification for it to exist? Societies charter businesses, not the other way around. We must demand more of businesses before granting them a charter to operate. And while it's a small thing, in some regards, Prop 65 is one step to keeping businesses more responsible and creating a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Letty?
Thank you. That was very beautiful, Tony and Martin. So for me, I have a passion for children's health. And, you know, I've seen this bumper sticker where you have the earth in the middle, and then it's at the bottom, it says no plan B. And that's exactly the case. This is our home. You know, this is where we live, work and play and learn. And we believe that everybody has that right, you know, to live, work and play and learn in a clean, safe environment. And our children, you know, they're not the adults right now, you know, it's not their turn yet. And so we have that responsibility. We have that role to then be able to take the action, and we take the actions that are needed really to heal our planet, to heal Mother Earth. And I do believe in humans. I know that the media, you know, watching them, too much of that media could make you think, oh boy, we're in big trouble. But I do believe that we are moving towards, you know, a better connection with our humans, and to get that. Unfortunately, things are not where we need them to be in terms of the health of people and the environment. But sometimes it does take us to really go that low, if you will, to be able to then understand that there's no plan B and that we all need to do our part. So I do feel that Prop 65 has been an incredible tool for us as an environmental justice community to use it in that defense, right? In the defense of our own health and ultimately for the environment. So we are on Kumeyaay territory here in in the Southern California region. And I want to thank them in particular for their wisdom and for their protection of our planet. And we have much to learn from them and from so many others that are working to protect and defend our planet. So thank you everybody for all the great work. I've been really inspired to hear all of your stories. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, so I'm on Ohlone land, and thank you for elevating that awareness and consciousness. So CH has forced Prop 65, or forced companies using Prop 65 to eliminate toxic chemicals from hundreds of products like shampoos and toys and jewelry. And those actions also form the basis of state and federal laws, like setting strict limits on lead and cadmium in children's products, or the story that Letty told before. It's also addressed air pollution here in California, which doesn't necessarily have the international implications. But for example, in partnership with local leaders and organizations in EJ communities, CEH has recently been able to use Prop 65 to force polluters to reduce and monitor hexavalent chromium emissions in Paramount, California, and reduce styrene emissions in 3 other cities. And it basically tells the story that Prop 65 is like an iceberg. All that most people see are the warnings that are visible above the waterline. But the real action happens invisibly below the surface. When companies remove toxic chemicals from thousands of consumer products or industrial practices, and usually companies do it quietly, and they do it to avoid warning on their products that say their products cause cancer or birth defects. It literally creates a race to the top. And so the companies that share our values, like Seventh Generation, are the ones who are leading that race. But not everybody likes Prop 65. Yes, there are too many warnings, and there was a question on YouTube about it. And so this is the last question because we only have a couple minutes. And I'll take the privilege of just answering it. And the person from the YouTube live screening said, Prop 65 labeling can be found on many products and storefronts as a defensive label to protect manufacturer or retailers from litigation. How do you prevent over-labeling? So I have no idea who that person is, but it's a great setup for what I want to share as we close. And that is that the key thing is that large corporations are profiting from the use of toxic chemicals and consistently trying to preempt Prop 65 in Washington or undermine it in Sacramento. And we're not going to let that happen. So to my YouTube questioner, today we are announcing with a strong coalition something called Prop 65 Protects. And it's a new campaign, and we're inviting each of you to join and be a Prop 65 defender. We need your support to protect the law that you just spent an hour listening about. And we're going to ask you to do 3 easy things. And those things will help to navigate us being able to strengthen the law. And one of our goals would be for there to be less defensive warning. 1, visit the new website that's going up right now called www.prop65protects.org. And there you can read stories about how the law protects your health and the health of your family and also the health of people who live near polluters. 2, right now in the chat, there should be sample tweets in the event chat. So please join me in picking 1 or 2 of those sample tweets and send it out to your followers. And 3, be an active voice about this issue of protecting Prop 65 on social media. And the easiest way to do that would be to follow on Twitter at Prop 65 Protects, and we'll help you by making that easy to do. So I want to thank the 3 of you so much for joining me. And I want to thank everyone for attending our virtual town hall. If you've enjoyed it today, please consider donating to CEH at ceh.org, or you can text GIVE to 510-288-3065. We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you next month with Shauna Swan and Tyrone Hayes. Thank you.